I am the vice chair of the Providence Republican City Committee, but as this was advertised, this is nonpartisan, it's open to everybody. Before we get started, first we want to thank you for coming because this is a very important subject, and I'd like you to meet the other officers in the city committee. As I said, my name is Sandy Rojas, I am the vice chair, and this is
Tara Pinsky, I'm the chair, and thank you for coming, as this affects all of us. People in the pension program and listeners who are also paying into it. And the next person.
I love cordless mics. I'm Steve DiNuccio, I'm secretary, and also like to note that we have in our audience Representative Doreen Costa. Welcome, and I'll just pass this on to you.
I'm Dan Harrop, I'm the treasurer of the Providence City Committee. Patrick Sweeney, executive director of the RIGOP. I don't know why I'm up there, but and I know that the tooth fairy just came off his appearance on Buddy Cianci, so we're glad that he could come down for this.
I wanted Patrick up here because he's been very supportive in what we wanted to do. We wanted to have this event as a public service event, so to educate and also to inform, because as Tara said, this is a very important subject. So thank you so much for being here, and I'd also like to, before I go forward, Rep. Gemma is here. He's from Warwick, so thank you very much for being here. To have one of our previous reps and one of our reps here is a great honor. Thank you. And without further ado, this is Gary Morse. This is the presenter for the evening. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Great.
Okay. My name is Gary Morse, and I want to thank you for coming tonight to hear about a really important matter in the state, which is pensions. And what I'd like to do is, this is in the format of a public forum, and so feel free to interrupt if there's a question that you have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'd be happy to clarify. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, and I'm not an actuary. So the question is, what is my background for talking about pension matters? In fact, my career was as a telecommunications analyst for 35 years. And at a point in my career around 1990, I was sent overseas to open up a new operation in the European community because, as you may recall, the European Common Market was coming together. And my job was to convince Fortune 500 companies to outsource their networks, and we would take on employees and we would do all the work on their behalf. And the first bid that I did, enrolling employees and putting together business case analysis, was the TWA Reservations Network. And I can assure you that if you thought Rhode Island's pension system was complex and crazy, you haven't seen anything until you've gone to places like Germany, Italy, and France. Anyhow, at a point in time, I had worked my way back to the States and did the same thing here and started working on state government networks and was doing assimilation of employees in that area, which again included pension benefits and things like that, which we had to recreate in the new entity. So at a point in time, a friend of mine who was with the South Kingston GOP asked me if, given my background, if I would take a look at the Rhode Island pension financials. Since I had looked at so many other corporations, I might be able to figure that out. And two things popped out after I opened the first few documents, was that the unfunded liability was huge, but it was even worse because if you look at it in the typical business case analysis, not the way an actuary looks at it, but in almost the way a bank would look at a prospective customer on a mortgage, you suddenly realize that looking at it in a business case analysis, Rhode Island was not only dead last in the race to the bottom, we were wildly dead last. And that had to do with things like GDP per capita and the ability to create jobs. So you have to look at this problem in terms of the ability for the residents of Rhode Island to actually pay this bill, which is in fact a big mortgage. So I became involved at that level, doing a lot of research, and had made my first presentation to the Ocean State Policy Research Institute back in the early part of 2009, when nobody was actually talking about this problem. I gave a presentation, and to my surprise, that presentation is still on the internet. So you can Google South Kingston GOP, and you'll see pension time bomb, and that's me. So anyhow, when John Robitaille was running, people were looking for someone who actually could talk about the pension problem and create some solutions. And my name was brought up, and so I worked with John's campaign to try and create a solution. And his solution was to do what's called a pension freeze, often referred to as a soft freeze, and on the existing pension system, and to roll into a 401k plan. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. Anyway, Treasurer Raimondo has described the Rhode Island pension problem as a math problem. So to give you a sort of a little anecdotal story to break the ice here, there's a little math folklore story, and I'm going to ask if anyone knows the answer to this afterwards. The story goes, there was a king who was so pleased with the game of chess that he asked the man who invented it in his kingdom if he would like some sort of a prize. And the man said, okay, what I'll do is I'll take the chessboard, 64 squares, and I'll put a penny on the first square, and then double it every square thereafter, and you can give me all the pennies that are left over. And the king said, hey, sounds like a great deal to me, and agreed to the prize. Well, after the treasurer said there's not enough money in your entire kingdom, the king took matters into his own hands and created his own solution for paying the inventor off. And as the story goes, he chopped his head off. Now, the issue is, does anyone have any idea what putting a penny on the first square of a chessboard amounts to, and doubling each successive square, what the ultimate final amount is, and why the king had the man's head chopped off? Has anyone heard this math problem before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exponential growth.
It's exponential growth, but you're not going to believe the number.
2 to the 64th.
What's that?
2 to the 64th.
Actually, 2 to the 64th minus 1,
Oh, sorry.
because you can't count the square. But anyhow, 2 to the 63rd power turns out to be 6,500 times our entire national gross domestic product of $15 trillion. So that is actually 92 quadrillion dollars. So you double a penny, you go all the way to the end, and you end up with 92 quadrillion dollars. The moral of the story is do your math before you agree to present any kind of prize. So with that, I'm going to speak about 3 conclusions that I've made in all of my work over the years on pensions. And some of it may be a surprise to you, but I'm going to say it anyhow. The rhetoric of greedy teachers and state workers is an absolute distortion of the facts. The basic pension, even with the COLAs, is not as overly generous as many believe given the past investment performance of those employee contributions. That is something that is close to me because I hear people talking about greedy teachers all the time. It's not true. That being said, there was a point in time in 2008 when the market meltdown occurred, and the mother's milk, so to speak, of all pension plans is the investment rate of return, otherwise known as the discount rate, by which you will be getting money coming in based on the size of your pension trust fund. And in 2008, the entire world changed. Up until 2008, the actual recorded returns for the pension trust fund, all of the state pensions, was 10.76% on an annualized basis. Now, when you take some money and you keep contributing to whether it's a 401k or your bank account, and you're earning 10.76% on an annualized basis, that amount that you're finally ending up with is a large amount. So teachers, for example, were asked to put 9.5% of their salary, their monthly salary, into a bank account with the state. And the state, of course, would realize the returns out of that. And by the time the teachers were to retire, there was a little nest egg there. In fact, it was a very large nest egg that was their contributions to the pension plan. The COLA, the average COLA on a pension is only about 23% of the entire value of the pension. The bulk of it comes in the pension itself, not in the COLAs. So anyhow, in 2008, the world shifted from great returns of the past to the world of misery moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit about that more. But that's two conclusions that I have. And then, as I mentioned before, with some basic business fundamentals, if you take a look at the Rhode Island unfunded liability, we sit squarely at number 50 at the bottom, and it looks like we're going to be there for a while. So, let me go back to sort of the issue on, and I want to make this as an emphasis because I read about this in so many journals and wherever, the notion of the greedy state worker and the greedy teacher. And I want to dispel that as much as I can.